Hey everyone, my name is Carlos. I'm the founder and CEO of Product School. And today I'm here with a special guest. His name is Chris O'Donnell, who's the Chief Product Officer at HubSpot. Hey, Chris.
Hey, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining the show. Can't wait to learn more about your background, how you're thinking about product, and where you think this industry is going, because not so long ago, this wasn't really that cool, right?
I always thought it was cool, but yeah, I guess it has a little bit more cool factor these days.
So how did you get into product?
How did I get into product? I just love making things. I love making things, and I love being around really talented people, and that for my whole life. I mean, for a while, it was woodworking, for a while, and still through today is, music and being around great musicians and trying to write songs and make records. I just love kind of being in the room when stuff gets made. And along the way, I got a job as a marketer in my 20s, and then had a shot to work on product at that company, ran product for a small private company, and then got into startups. And the startup that I joined was acquired by HubSpot. And that was, 10 years ago, if you can believe it, 9.5 years ago about. And I've just kind of held on, and I've grown up here, trying to hold on to the rocket ship. And but I got into it the way a lot of people get into it, which is sort of through the bathroom window. You're kind of around, you're in the building, you're hanging out, and all of a sudden they say, geez, you want to work with the engineers and the designers. And I was lucky enough that I said yes.
I mean, and what you're doing now, it's pretty impressive, because not everyone is successful at transitioning from the startup world to a larger corporation. So in your own experience, how was that transition for you?
Huge. I mean, when I joined HubSpot, I was the front end developer for the stuff I was working on. I was the designer. I was the UX researcher. I was the support expert. I was the sales trainer. All of these things. And today we have people who sit in each of those roles. And so what is the product manager left to do? So it becomes much more business focused and stays very customer focused, but we try to train our product managers to be just amazing storytellers. The thing is, I always thought in the early years of HubSpot, I always thought, any minute I'm going to leave and go do a startup. I'm not going to do this big company thing and go through IPO and all the rest of that. And I ended up really loving some of the challenges of my current role, which are, they're product challenges. I work on the product, I still do. But they're really like organizational challenges, hiring, culture, just trying to product manage the product of what it means to be a product manager at HubSpot, if that makes any sense.
Totally.
And it turns out I actually love it. I actually really, really like that. I love getting, my customers are my team in a lot of ways, and I get their feedback. And I can, make a couple of big decisions a year and try to, give them what they need so that they're happy. And it's worked out pretty well. We have a pretty amazing team.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I always say that for me, product is more of a mindset than the actual title. You can treat as a product, you can treat your product, your team as a product. And once you get into that mode of, okay, there is a problem that I'm going to need to figure out. I don't have all the answers yet, but I have a good team and I have a good intuition. I'm going to look at certain data points, certain quality information, and then try to make the best out of this whole situation. That's exactly what product is for me.
I totally agree. I mean, renovating a house, or, we were talking about kids and, getting kids into, a school situation that works for them. I mean, all of these things are really that type of thinking, and I think a lot of people are more product managers in their daily lives than they might realize.
So I'm very passionate about lifelong learning. And actually, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to create a product school, because I couldn't believe that there was this type of education in the traditional system. So in your own experience, how did you learn the hard way to actually, manage a team, redesign the org chart, and do all the things that are not in a textbook, basically?
Right. Getting feedback, but from two very specific places. So a lot of people look to their boss for feedback, and that can be great. I have a great boss. I work for Brian Halligan. He's one of the best CEOs in the world. He's a wonderful guy. He's a friend of mine. He gives me great feedback. He gives me really helpful reviews and stuff to work on. But I get more feedback from my team and my peers than I'll ever get from any boss, you know? And that's been really, really key. And as I've seen folks, you know, the folks who've held on to the rocket ship and folks who've gone off to do other things, I think one of the big differences is, do you have a peer group where people are telling you how you're doing? You know, that those are the people. I mean, Whitney Sorensen, our head of engineering, is my best friend. And he and I talk all day, every day. And he's hard on me. You know, he pushes me really, really hard. And that's kind of the key. You know, I get the feedback. Hey, this went well. Hey, the water cooler talk about, you know, our roadmap is this. You know, here's how people are thinking and feeling. So I think peer feedback is something you can never, you know, fail to learn from. The other is, I found it very helpful to find people who are like 3 to 5 years ahead of you in your career. Like a lot of people look to these big fancy business leaders and they want to learn from Elon Musk and they want to learn from all this stuff, or the young product managers come and they want to learn from Brian Halligan. And, you know, there's definitely a lot to learn from Bob Iger and Elon Musk and, you know, Bill Gates and all the rest of that for sure. But for me, finding someone who's just a little bit ahead of me is incredible, because they're closer to what I'm actually doing. You know, and so I'll talk to Brad Rencher, who used to have my job at Adobe for 10 years. And he's like a big brother, you know, and so I call him up and vent and say, oh my God, you know, is this part of my job is getting really hard, or here's how I'm spending my time. Is this insane? And because he's just 5 years, maybe a little bit more in his case, ahead of me, you know, I can get that feedback. Or I'll call Fiji Simo at Facebook. You know, folks who are doing what I'm doing and they're still close to it. They have an org that looks like my org, but is, you know, a little bit bigger. And I'll sanity check things, and that seems to help, because there's definitely, especially for product leadership, there's no content. There's nothing about this stuff. I mean, this is like a total, you know, black art. You know, in terms of trying to figure out, like, oh my God, I'm taking my design team from 50 people to 200 people. What am I going to run into? You know, there's no blog post about that. Right? I mean, if there is, I hope someone will forward it to me. I'd love to read it. But there's nothing there.
Yeah, I so resonate with what you said, because there is no playbook. There are obviously some patterns that you can recognize by talking to certain people, but again, at the end of the day, it's your call. And it's great to know that there is this figure roles, such as Steve Jobs was a big one in the product world. But at the end of the day, I think it's cool to have a mentor or a friend or a peer. It doesn't really matter the label you want to put. At the end of the day, it's like, hey, I'm humble enough. I want to learn. Even if you don't have all the answers in the world, maybe you've done this particular thing and I just want to learn from your experience. I found it particularly helpful as well.
You want someone in my experience, when I'm working with someone and they grab the laptop away from me and they start showing me how to do something, that's what I want. You know,
yeah.
I want someone to be like, no. Let me show you how to do this. And yeah, I find that with folks sort of 5 years ahead of me, maybe, I learn a lot there.
And another thing I would say, at least it worked for me, is that sometimes I graduate some of my mentors or the people who gave me advice because the company might be in a different situation, or maybe the person that I used to get advice from was good at one particular thing, but now it's something different. I think it's totally okay to have kind of a council of good people that you can rely on, instead of just one single mentor who's supposed to have every single answer in the world.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, those people often are thinking about different things and working on different things. And so the feedback is going to be like, you know, in my experience, very high level and not specific. And, you know, so I reach out to people all the time, you know, who are doing this, but doing it at ServiceNow or doing it at Facebook or doing it at Amazon or something like that. And, you know, here's the thing, reaching out to someone and just saying, hey, I'd love a coffee, just don't do that, you know? But if you have a good question and you write someone, they're going to write you back. If somebody's running a startup and they have a question about scaling a design team, using that as an example, and they write me an email, I'm going to write them back. I'm going to take time to write them back, and everybody sort of seems to be that way. But, just sort of this bland networking doesn't really get you there, just meet for coffee to have mentorship or whatever.
I agree. It's almost patronizing, because when you put that label on someone, it's supposed that you ask the questions, the person gives you the answers. But I think when you establish more of a peer-to-peer relationship, one day you are helping the other person the same way the person can be helping you. And I think that's where that true relationship happens. Anyway, I think one day we should talk more about mentorship in general. I think it's very underrated. And in some cases, there's this whole aura around how to find a mentor that is going to guide you in your life. And I think it's more about a network of good people that and a relationship that you build over time, not just cold emails saying, let's grab coffee for the sake of it.
Right, exactly. And someone that you can ask stupid questions to. That's one of the things I love about HubSpot is you can raise your hand in a meeting and say, I don't understand what we're talking about, and it's sort of a teaching hospital where, the room will sort of bring you up to speed. And a lot of times you find out you actually do understand what's going on and you're actually on the same page with people. But, for our associate product managers, when we bring them in, we require that they have a mentor. And that mentor is someone who's, again, just maybe a few years ahead of them in their career. And that's important because, sometimes we get self-conscious and we don't want to go to our boss and ask how to do something that we should know how to do, or we think we should know how to do. But if you have someone that you can kind of, slack on a daily basis and ask stupid questions to, that's really what we need. We all need it. I need it.
And I think, Chris, what you're doing right now as a CPO, as ultimate product leader, to set the example of like, hey, I also want to ask questions. I also want to learn from others. Really boils down to everyone in the organization and creates a type of culture of helping each other out instead of expecting that the next level up is going to tell you exactly what you have to do.
Yeah, exactly.
So how do you go about hiring people? You mentioned that your way into product was unconventional, like most of us. Mm-hmm. So you mentioned you guys have an APM program, but I guess you also make some external hires. So what's your philosophy around hiring PMs?
Sure. APMs are essentially entirely internal. And we've learned that it's easier to teach somebody product management, especially the way that we do it is it's a little different. We give the teams enormous power. We deploy 1,000 times a day to production, over 1,000 times a day. The frontline teams have all the power. And so coming in and learning product management and HubSpot, the business model, our customers and everything is very hard. So, we hire the very, very, very best people in support usually. And it's kind of an unfair advantage for us. They come into the role, they've done 2,000-3,000 customer calls already. They know every inch of the product inside and out. We're very transparent on our wiki and at company meetings. And so they're very exposed to the business, just being at HubSpot. It doesn't matter who you are, everybody understands SaaS and, our business model and our customers and so forth. So for us to teach them product management it's hard, but it's very doable, and the hardest challenge there is just getting them to believe in themselves and getting them to have confidence to take positions and make bets and believe in themselves, because you kind of get into the role and you start looking around like, oh my God, I actually do have a ton of power. About 4 months into the APM program, every single APM has this moment where they say, you've made a huge mistake. I'm not supposed to be here. I don't have any idea what I'm doing. I'm not prepared to make these decisions. Every single one, 100% of them between 3 and 4 months goes through that period, 100%. And we just wrap our arms around them and say, nope, you got this. You can do this and get them confidence. And they almost 100% of them make it through it. On the senior side, we hire externally. My direct team is a collection of product VPs and a VP of UX. And those were really almost all, 4 out of 5, I'd say, are external hires. Diversity is incredibly important to us. So internal, external, all roles. We do the Rooney Rule. and we have wide slates. We talk to all sorts of people. We are sure to talk to lots of people from underrepresented categories. And that's very important to us because, our customers are very diverse. We have offices around the world. We have global customers. We have, people, all kinds of different businesses, all kinds of different communication styles. And so shouldn't our product team reflect that? So that's kind of the big hallmark, I think, especially the last few years of our kind of hiring practices. I have a recruiter who's dedicated to product and UX. She's incredible. If you want to work at HubSpot, look her up. Her name is Ashley Hodder. She's a delight. She's awesome. And the last thing I'll say about it is, I am very authentically interested in people's careers in product. I have to admit, primarily people from underrepresented categories, and so I spend a lot of my free time working with people on their careers, whether they work for me or not, and so it's really common for us to interview someone and they, I had a call yesterday. I spent an hour, with someone yesterday. She got really close. She said, I want to do a small company thing. I want to do a startup. I said, great. Let's meet quarterly. If you want, we'll talk about the challenges that you have. I just really care about your career. And a lot of those people do end up joining the team. So that's another really important thing is like, I try to act like a sports agent, and look out for people. And I help other companies with their product hiring, right? It's a whole kind of community thing. And I never try to attract someone to a role at HubSpot when it's not the right thing for them, and I spend a lot of time on that with people. Hey, I'm thinking about taking this job at Google Cloud. What would that be like? Well, I don't know. Let me go find out. Let's talk about it. Oh yeah, this looks like a great gig for you. So
I love that. We're talking about this off the record about like some of the people we have in common and how we connected many years ago, and somehow then we keep in touch. And this is a marathon at the end of the day. We're in the business of building relationships and keeping our reputation. So the more we help, even what you are doing today, which is giving back to the product community and showing up and showing that, hey, it's okay. You don't have to have all these perfect answers. You don't have to have this perfect resume, and you can still make it in product. It's really powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to that point, thinking about hiring from the other side of being a candidate, and I'm sure folks here are some of the folks on this are thinking about, changing jobs or getting into product for the first time or whatever. And it's like, to me, it's all about the stories. It's about working at companies that have a good reputation. That's much more important than the title. Where you go to school, I think, doesn't really matter anymore. I don't know where anybody on my team went to school. I have no idea, and I don't care. I know where they all worked, and I know what stories they have. I know the narrative of their kind of career and what they've gone through. And those are the things that make them very attractive in terms of candidates to join the team.
That's really empowering for the next generation of product leaders. When I started the company around 7 years ago, a lot of people would ask me, hey, do I need an MBA to be a product manager? Do I need a computer science degree? And, that wasn't that obvious back in the day. There was still a lot of bias towards engineers and MBAs. And don't get me wrong, there are amazing PMs that come from those backgrounds. But the fact that now you hire from support, there are other companies that they have more of an eye for design, marketing, whatever it is. The point is, you can make it. I think it's more of a mindset to understand you are going to stop being a specialist in whatever you like, and you are going to move towards the middle and be more of a generalist. So the more time being a better specialist, it's not going to help you. I always tell this to my engineers, like, you want to be a PM and you have 4 years of experience as an engineer. Working as an engineer number 5, it just doesn't move the needle. Like, why don't you spend that year learning more about design and support and marketing or whatever it is, so to be a better ally, as you said, a better coach for others.
I think that's right. And what the advice I give people is to be the sort of the T-shaped person. And I'm not the first one to come up with this, but to have one discipline where you really are bringing something very special to the table. And then to have a lot of disciplines where you're kind of like a B-, like I'm a B- designer, or maybe a B on a good day. I'm not an amazing designer, but I used to be a D. And, I spent a couple of years really learning about user experience and, UI design, information architecture, and reading books and talking to people and all this kind of stuff. And I got to the point where like, I'm decent. I could do the job on my team. And that's an important thing. I'm nowhere near the best designers on my team. I mean, they smoke me. But, I'm a decent data analyst. I'm a decent user researcher. You kind of get decent at these things. And then you can work with, especially as your company grows, work with people who are full-time specialists in each of those things, as you say, as the sort of generalist product manager.
Yeah,
and it's just right.
Same thing as a CEO. I made the mistake in the past of thinking, oh, I'm not good at this. I'm just going to hire someone to fix those problems. No. I need to go in first, learn enough to be dangerous, and then, of course, make the decision to hire someone better.
Exactly. And because you need to be able to call bullshit and you need to understand. And you know what? Like if you're a B- in one of those disciplines and someone's trying to sell you on something that isn't smart, you'll realize and you'll go, wait a second. This doesn't make any sense. And that's a very important thing in product management, I think, is just saying like, hey, wait a second. Until someone can explain this to me, we're not doing it. There's a lot of value just in that.
So I know HubSpot is a rocket ship, but like, what is the status of the company today, especially on the product team?
Yeah, the status. Well, so we're a public company. We're still, I think of going public as getting your jersey, not winning the ring. And that's, I think, very important. A lot of East Coast companies have gone public and then just puttered out because everybody was like, we did it, and we very explicitly were like, this is our entry into the major leagues, and so we still think of ourselves a bit as like an expansion team. We're a newer team. We're a small cap company. Depending on the day, it's 16 billion, 18 billion market cap, something like that, depending on the day. And in R&D, we're about 1,200 people. We have, probably 700 engineers, some folks that are overhead. And then on my side, frontline product managers, it's over 100 now. And we have a designer for every single product manager. So they're paired up. So we actually have more designers today. We happen to have more designers than we have product managers. And then we bundle them together into these small autonomous teams. You have a product manager, a designer, a tech lead who spends half their time coaching, half their time coding. And then, maybe two or three engineers. That PM and UX pair can actually lead not just one of these dev teams, but maybe three. Two is probably most common. So yeah, and for anybody who's interested in the inside baseball, we're running like 7 engineers to 1 PM to 1 UX.
Yeah, that sounds about right. That's the ratio that we've seen. But it's really amazing. I love asking this question because there is no good or bad answer. But I really love, one of the things I found unique is that you have a similar ratio, designers to PMs, even more designers, you said?
Yeah.
That's really powerful because I think there used to be a bias towards engineering. And now we're seeing that in your case, which your product is mostly B2B, it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, it's all people. So B2B is the new B2C, and there has to look good. It has to feel good. And you need that type of user experience.
We found that when, because of course, the other way to do it is to have some central design team, that gets sort of contracted out onto different projects and shared resources. We did that and it was awful, and what happens is the designers are the principal distinction or difference is that the designers get brought in very late in the process. And when you bring a designer in late into the process, I see someone here in the chat, Yelene, is talking about being a UX designer. So this is a good one for you, Yelene. You want to get into the development cycle early if you're in UX, okay? Because then you can be really strategic. You can help understand the problem, define the problem, and you have a huge impact on what actually gets built. Whereas if you have central resources, often what happens is the dev team and the product manager just go ahead, they build something, they haven't researched it particularly well, and then the designer is asked to make it look pretty. And those designers, frankly, they quit. And I don't blame them. It's not a fun job. It's just not a lot of fun. Whereas when the designers are much more strategic and they're involved in research, it's really fun and they have a ton of impact.
Yeah, and I want to make a call for more designers to break into product. I think we need more of them because traditionally we've seen a lot of technical folks and business folks, and design is so underrated still today. We need more people that want to do that, and more CPOs like yourself who are empowering those designers and those even non-designers to think more about design.
Yeah, and we're starting to see it. We're starting to see, I think UX in general as an industry needs to become more strategic. I think they need to become closer to the business. I would love to see more UX founders of big successful companies. We don't see a lot of them. I mean, Steve Jobs wasn't a design person even. I mean, we have Brian Chesky, I guess, at Airbnb, but you don't see a lot of people with design backgrounds founding companies and being business leaders. And I really think that needs to change because, the more we bring UX into the business, for example, we're going to do a deep user research project on a pricing and packaging question, or we're going to do a big design project on the pricing page. It's unbelievable, and the business people, the people who are sort of on the go-to-market side, they see this research and they see the design thinking that goes into it. And they're like, oh my God, you got to see this deck. And the decks get flown around and the UX researchers get brought into the executive team, faster than it's like unbelievable. So I really want to see more of that.
So now with this big team that it's working at HubSpot, how do you structure your day-to-day? Like you wake up in the morning, how does your calendar look like?
It's very different day to day. I spend a lot of time with my team. I spend a good amount of time with my counterparts, like Yamini, who runs all of our customer pillar of the company. She runs all of sales, services, marketing. So I stay very close with her. She's unbelievable. I'm learning so much from her. She was at Workday and then Dropbox and now at HubSpot. She's amazing. And we have to stay very, very aligned because if we're not aligned, then our teams are going to get out of alignment and then work is going to be no fun, right? We're going to be in meetings where people are pointing fingers and all this kind of stuff. So she and I stay really close. I stay really close with my direct team. I spend, probably an hour a day diving into one part of the product or another. I can't be involved deeply in all parts of the product at every time, but I'm usually involved in 2 or 3 where I'm in the Slack channel. I'm, like part of the team, kind of more like Zuckerberg-y, I guess. Although I'm probably a lot quieter than he is. We don't do these big, product review type things. We let the teams go. It's not a Marissa Meyer thing where they come in and present to us and we pick it apart before they go out to production. It's not at all. They come to us and they say, here's what we did and here's how it went, and here's what we're going to do next. Which again makes it really fun. And people work harder. They own their mistakes. We tolerate their mistakes. And it just ends up being way better for customers. So I spend time talking to customers. Customers are friends too. I mean, our customers, I text with them. It's really, I know their families. We go to their weddings. We're very close with our customers. Because these people are literally feeding their families using our software, and that's a humbling privilege for us to have. So I spent a bunch of time there too. I spent a bunch of time with my boss. I spent a bunch of time in, business readout meetings, QBRs, that type of thing. It's a good amount of time, probably a couple days a week worth of just kind of operating system, big meetings. Not my favorite thing in the world to do, but it's important. And I have to kind of be a senator and bring the perspective from our team and represent our team in a gracious way. So yeah, that's kind of what my days. Oh, in recruiting. Yeah, a lot of recruiting.
Not bad. Well, I'm honored that you were able to carve time to give back to the community. I know it's fun, but it's also a lot of work. I think from the outside, a lot of people might think that, you get the job as a PM and that's it. As you were mentioning, you go public and you won. In reality, that's when the fun starts.
Oh man, yeah, no, that was a distant memory, man. That was very much the beginning. And by the way, I love to give back to the community, but I'm also here to recruit.
Go for it.
Yeah, I'm trying to like, hey, look, HubSpot.com/jobs. Absolutely. We're hiring, we hired 100 people on my team last year. So, and we're much more open to remote work these days. We really want to cast a wide net, find the best people in the world. So, that's at least greater than 0% of why I'm on the phone. Although it's also just great to chat.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Chris. It's been a pleasure. Take care.
All right, bye-bye.